You know that feeling, right? When someone, a friend, a partner, maybe even a coworker, just vanishes from your life. No call, no text, no explanation. Just gone. It's this incredibly confusing and honestly really painful thing to go through. So today, we're going to dive into the psychology behind why some people walk away without giving us that simple courtesy of closure. Let's try to make some sense of it.
This is the question, isn't it? This is the one that can just haunt you for weeks, months, sometimes longer. It just sends your mind into overdrive, right? You're replaying every single conversation, every little moment, just looking for that one clue you must have missed. It's this awful feeling of being left completely in the dark, and it's totally normal to wonder why on earth it happens.
And honestly, that's the perfect way to put it. You've invested all this time and emotion and energy into the story, and then bam, no ending. This analogy just nails that feeling of incompletion, that deep frustration of being left hanging. You're forced to come up with the ending all by yourself, and let's be real, it's usually not a very kind one to yourself.
Okay, so let's start here with why this hurts so much. The pain isn't just that the relationship is over, it's the way it ended. It's all about that ambiguity, that big, gaping hole where a reason should be.
And this is so true. What's really fascinating here is how our brains work. See, our brains are basically meaning-making machines. They absolutely hate a vacuum of information. So when we don't get an answer, what does our brain do? It just creates one. And its default setting, unfortunately, is often self-blame. That silence becomes a blank canvas for us to paint all of our worst fears onto.
So let's try to make a really conscious shift here. Instead of getting stuck in that loop of what did I do wrong, let's try to put on our detective hats for a minute and ask, what was going on in their world? Now, this isn't about making excuses for them, not at all. It's just about trying to understand the behavior.
All right, so what is actually going on in their head? Well, it's often a completely different universe from what we're experiencing. There's this huge disconnect between how they see what they're doing and the emotional wreckage it actually causes. And you can see that massive disconnect right here. In their mind, they might actually believe they're being kind, sparing your feelings by dodging a hard conversation. But what you feel is the exact opposite, just deep confusion. They think they're avoiding an ugly scene, but what you're left with is this crippling self-doubt. They choose what they see as the easier path, but to you it just feels like profound disrespect.
And this is the raw, unfiltered thought that's usually driving the whole thing. It has very little to do with protecting you. It's about protecting themselves from feeling uncomfortable. It's about them avoiding their own difficult emotions, their own anxiety about a confrontation. The number one motivation is almost always their own emotional comfort, not your well-being.
So what are the psychological gears turning behind this need to just escape? Because it's usually not just some random personality quirk. There are often much deeper patterns at play here. This right here is the big one: conflict avoidance. For some people, the simple idea of a tough conversation triggers this intense, almost phobic level of anxiety. They just don't have the emotional tools to deal with it, so their brain's only solution is to hit the eject button and get out of the situation completely.
For someone who's high in conflict avoidance, this process can feel almost automatic. It starts with just a hint that a difficult conversation might be coming. That hint alone triggers this overwhelming wave of anxiety. And when you're in that state of emotional panic, escape doesn't just feel like a good option, it feels like the only option to make that terrible feeling stop.
But of course, it's rarely just one thing, right? Conflict avoidance is often tangled up with things like emotional immaturity, just not having the skills to handle grown-up conversations. It can also be rooted in insecure attachment styles from childhood, or even this warped sense of self-preservation, where they truly believe that protecting their own peace, even if it hurts others, is the most important thing.
Now, we're coming to a really critical turning point in all of this. It's about challenging a belief that so many of us have, the idea that we absolutely need their explanation in order to move on. I mean, let's really sit with this question for a second. Do you have to put your entire life on pause just waiting for a key from the same person who locked the door and walked away? Is your healing really, truly dependent on them? The answer, you might be surprised to find, is no. And this leads us to such a powerful realization. True closure, it's an inside job. It's not a gift that somebody else gives you. It's a decision that you make to accept the situation for what it is, to see their silence not as a judgment of your worth, but as a statement about their own limitations. It's about giving yourself permission to move forward.
So if closure is something you create, how do you actually do that? Well, this is where you take back control. You get to grab the pen and write the final chapter of this story for yourself.
And here are some really powerful tools to help you do just that. Writing a letter that you never ever send lets you get all of those feelings out without needing them to hear it. Reframing the story, seeing their exit as a sign of their incompatibility, not your failure, that is a game changer. Just acknowledging that it's okay to feel hurt and angry and confused is so important. And finally, making that conscious choice to shift your focus to what's next for you, that's how you really turn the page.
This says it all, doesn't it? Their departure was a plot point. Yeah, a big one, for sure, but it wasn't the finale. You are the author of your life story. You get to decide what happens in the next chapter and the one after that.
And I just want to leave you with this final thought. We get so obsessed with that torn out last page, right? But what if we shifted our focus to all the chapters we did have? The lessons we learned, the ways we grew, maybe even the good times that did exist. What if we decide that the story itself is valuable, even if it has an unresolved ending? Maybe the real closure is just accepting that some stories don't have neat, tidy endings. And maybe that's okay.